Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're about 12 minutes behind. I'm going to speed this up a little bit. As we're coming in, I need it, y'all. Let's start with the meditation that we always do. For folks who have been here before, we did 10 workshops in the fall of 2020. The workshops came about as a result of COVID and all of us, being isolated, many of us being isolated. And, a few folks were asking, who are writers, and some folks who had never written and wanted to express themselves, for writing advice. And I decided, well, why don't we just create a group? And we thought it would be, 5-10 people per workshop. And it's turned into 100 or so people per workshop and over 900 people in our Facebook group. So kudos to all of us coming together for the last year. Are you okay? Whoever's coughing, are you okay? Hey, and we also put together a book called 2020 about what happened, all the things that went down in the year 2020. So we've been doing work, you all, and we decided to change the format a little bit this time around. And instead of me talking a lot and giving y'all a lot of assignments, which we did the first workshop, we're going to have a series of guest writers that I love and adore, like V, formerly Eve Ensler. We had Dave Zirin last week. We have Nikki Giovanni coming up. We have a lot of great writers, and I'm just thrilled. I love V so much. I can't even tell you. I'll save that for the introduction. But this is what our workshop is. It's a safe space, a non-judgmental group. Please unmute for a second, folks, please, as long as you don't have noise behind you, a lot of noise. Please unmute for a second, everyone, please. Please. Hey, James Phoenix. Hey, Camille Kane. Hey, Tavetta. Hey, Jay Wiggins. Hey, Carla Vega. Hey, Marina. Hey, Felicia Hayes. Hey, Wanda. Hey, Elizabeth. Hey, Michael Sinclair. I see Colorado. I see Missouri, Kansas, New York. I see upstate New York. I see California. I see Canada. I see Minnesota. Hey, y'all. Hey, everybody out there. I'm going to, like I said, speed this up a bit, but I don't want to ignore what we always do. Again, it's a safe space. What's our mantra, y'all? Hashtag what?
I am a writer.
I'm a writer. The reason why we came up with that hashtag last year this time is because a lot of us had a lot of hesitancies. And, V, one of the things I really want to talk to you about is just because you're one of our greatest writers, period, V. Let's just say it what it is. I'm going to say it. We have to give people their flowers. And I'm going to say it. I know I'm embarrassed, but I'm going to say it anyway. But one thing I love about V, she has always talked about the overall wellness of us. The overall wellness of us. And so that's where V and everyone who's new to this tonight that came from hashtag I'm a writer, we're like, we have to affirm ourselves. We have to affirm each other. When we say safe space, non-judgmental space, this is a space where you're free to speak your minds. Absolutely. But we are not going to tolerate racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, classism, ageism, ableism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, any form of hatred, oppression, discrimination, ugliness, people just being mean. Y'all with me out there?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's also something, because what we heard, V, from a lot of people who have been in other workshops, folks were tearing each other down. And I've been in those kind of workshops. And we're like, we're not going to do that here. This is about supporting each other, pushing each other to be the best writers possible. We definitely push the craft of writing. Am I right, y'all? The craft of writing is important.
Yes.
Grammar, spelling, rewritings, editing is absolutely important. Let me do this. We got 9 people trying to get in the room. But as we do this, can we just go ahead and jump into our meditation really quickly? Because I want to get to V as fast as possible. But let's close our eyes because I need it. I've had an interesting day. I just came from a workout in spin class because I needed it because I had a weird conversation earlier today. And one thing that my teacher in spin class said that I so appreciated, Nicholas, I want to shout out Nicholas, is that let's just push out that negative energy and pull in positive energy. So what we do, V, and everyone else who's here for the first time, we breathe in through our noses. Let's start breathing, you all. Let's keep our mics unmuted. Push it, bring in positive energy. We push out the negative. Let's just do that for a few seconds. Just breathe. Please keep breathing. Because a lot of times we don't know how to slow down. It's important to slow down. It's important to be still. It's important to be still. That's why we do this breathing exercise at the beginning and end of every session. It's important to be still. Just keep breathing for a few more seconds. Just in through the nose, out through the mouth. If you have noise in the background, please mute it. We're asking folks not to mute if you don't have noise in the background. Or horns or cars. So let's do this. Let's do, in the spirit of unity, let's do 3 breaths in together through our noses. The first one, 1, 2, 3, deep breath in. Push it out, make some noise. Let's do the second one in, deep breath in through our nose, positive energy through our nose, in. Push it out. Let's do this real big breath in, positive energy in through our nose, in, 1, 2, 3, in. Make the biggest possible. Y'all are funny. So, welcome to our workshop. Here we are. I wanna do this because formerly Eve Ensler is a living legend, and I don't even want to talk much. I just want to get into it. We're gonna put V. Can I see V? Is she there? Are they there? Okay. We're gonna put in the chat room for you all her bio, and also how you can support V-Day, her great organization, and also how you can buy 4 of her books. I could read the bio, I can put it in the chat room, but I'd rather say that I love her very dearly, deeply. I consider her a great sister, friend, ally, accomplice, mentor.
Accomplice.
The wisdom that I've gotten from V is just, I'm trying not to get emotional here, but let me just say, there are people that I've come across who their aura is just so profound. Not only can you tell they've been here before, but it feels like they've been here for hundreds and hundreds of years. And that's what I feel about V. There's never a conversation that I've had with her where I haven't walked away just thinking about things very differently, always. The obvious is that she's a Tony Award winning playwright, activist, performer, famous for many things, including creating the Vagina Monologues, which is one of those historic plays that has been performed all around the world. I mean, literally, V, pretty much everyone I've ever talked to is like, I was in Vagina Monologues, and I was in Vagina Monologues, and I was in Vagina Monologues. I was like, this is incredible. This is like Shakespeare, you know what I'm saying? It's like, and I want to talk about that and how you came to create it and everything else. But I also want to add that, her best-selling book, The Apology, is one of the most important books that I've ever read as well. I'm going to let her explain what it's about, but I really want to encourage you all. That book, In the Body of the World, this
Come on. Yes.
Okay. But without further ado, I want to welcome V to the stage, and let's get this conversation going. And thanking y'all for having patience with me for screwing up the room tonight. We got it right. We're here now. So thank goodness.
Hi, Kevin.
Hey, V. How are you?
Hi, everyone out there.
Hey,
You writers. I'm so happy to be with you all tonight. You didn't screw up. It's just time, and time isn't even real. So let's not even get hung up on that. We're all cool.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to just start, we had Dave Zirin here from The Nation last week, and it was a really beautiful conversation, and I'm really enjoying this. How did you come to writing and art? When did it start for you?
I love Dave Zirin, and he's just wonderful.
He loves you. He gives us regards.
No, he's just doing beautiful work in this world, as are you, Kevin. And I love you so much. And thank you for that beautiful introduction. How did I come to do art? Survival. Um, I think, I think when you grow up in a really violent environment where your life is constantly threatened, you either create alternative realities or you perish. So I know this is going to sound like a crazy way that it all began, but it actually began with a fictional character that I invented named Mr. Alligator.
Mr. Alligator.
And my father was like a very violent, very patriarchal character. And when he would get really violent and he would do terrible things to me, I would go and I would pick up the phones, and they were rotary dial in those days. So they made a lot of noise when you dialed it, and I would speak really loudly on the phone, and I would call Mr. Alligator. And I would say, "Hi, Mr. Alligator, it's time for you to come. It's really bad here and I need you to come." And everyone could hear me making this call. It was like consciously. And then I would pack my little suitcase with some crayons and, an orange. And I'd go to the end of our sidewalk and I'd sit there the whole day, right? The whole day. And I'd wait for Mr. Alligator, and I would tell myself when he didn't come, like there were other children who were worse off than me and he had to go to them first, but he'd come some other day, and I did this all the time. But that exercise really taught me about creating alternative realities, characters, beings that I could make in my head in order to survive. And that was really the beginning of me writing in a strange way, because that character, I want to finish this story because I always tell this story. So like, I did this a lot, and Mr. Alligator never did show up when I was a child, right? He never came. But years later, I was in Kenya, and I helped support the opening of this amazing safe house for girls with an amazing woman named Agnes Pareo, who is now running, it's an amazing story. She's running for parliament, but at the time she was a Maasai woman who had been cut through female genital mutilation, and she had made it a practice and a determination to stop that practice from happening. And she'd been walking through Maasai land for many, many years with a little box, and inside her box she had a half of a woman's torso, and she had a vagina, and she would show people in the Maasai community what a mutilated vagina looked like and what a healthy one looked like. Wow. And in the course of her walking, she had saved 1,500 girls from being cut. Immediately I fell in love with this woman, and I just was like, what can I do? I'm serving at your altar. You're a genius and you're just brave. And so she said, well, you could help me. You could, you could get me a Jeep, right? Because if I had a Jeep, I wouldn't have to walk for miles and miles. So I managed to raise money, and we bought her a Jeep. And so she drove, and then that year she saved 1,500 girls. And so I said, what else? And she said, well, if you got me money, I could build a house. And girls could run away because the law supports them, and I could keep them until they weren't cut, and then they could go home. So I found the money, and she built a house, and she invited me to the opening. And when I got there, I could hear all the girls singing, and it was the most joyous song I've ever heard. And when I got out of the car, all these girls and Agnes greeted me on this path. And I looked down, and it was the same exact stone of my childhood path.
Wow.
And they walked me up to the house, and they cut the ribbon, and I went, oh my God, Mr. Alligator finally came. It was so profound.
Wow.
And it really taught me that if you can imagine something, if you can see it, you can actually manifest it. Maybe not on your time schedule, but it will manifest at some point in your life, And I think sometimes that's what writing is. It's like a manifestation. It's a imagining. It's a writing into the possible, right? Or what feels like the impossible,
Wow. I have to ask, how old were you when you created Mr. Alligator? And for those who don't know, what city was it?
I was about 9 or 10, maybe even younger. Yeah, I was young. Yeah, and it went on for years.
Which city or state for folks who don't know?
I was in Westchester. Yeah. Okay. And that thing happened like almost 40 years later, in Kenya.
Since you started there, I would like to just keep there. You talked about your father. I mean, The Apology is an incredible book because you take on your father. You take on your father and you say that this is the apology that I wish I would have gotten. Can you talk about it and the process of writing that book? Like, is it okay that we start there since we started
Sure,
with
sure.
nostalgia? Okay.
Yeah. I think of all the writing adventures I have had,
Hmm.
that has been the most grueling and the most challenging and also the most liberating. So my father's been dead 31 years. And I will say that all the time that my father was alive, and I didn't really speak to my father much in the last 20 years of my life because he had been so violent and so cruel. But all those years when my father was alive, I just was waiting, dreaming that my father would one day apologize to me, would one day come and say, I'm sorry I raped you. I'm sorry I beat you. I'm sorry I undermined you. I'm sorry I made you feel stupid. I'm sorry I called you names. I'm sorry I destroyed your heart. Sorry I betrayed you. My father never apologized. My father didn't believe in apologies. Patriarchs don't apologize. That's what sustains patriarchy. It's one of the columns of patriarchy is the non-apology, right? It's the one of the columns of white supremacy. Never apologize. Never own what you've done. One of the columns of you just name it.
Right.
Like, we don't make amends. We don't apologize. That's how we keep our power. Because to admit apology means you acknowledge wrongdoings, and if you wrongdoings, then you humble yourself. And patriarchs and supremacists don't ever humble themselves. So my father was dead 31 years. And I really couldn't believe how often I would go to the mailbox expecting an apology even then, right?
Wow.
And it was crazy. It was crazy. And so finally I just was watching this, we've been doing this movement to end violence against women and girls for 25 years. And then the next iteration of Me Too, the astounding Me Too, happened. And I was watching all these men get called out, you did this, losing jobs, stepping off, stepping out of the Senate, stepping out of TV shows, and I realized not one man was apologizing. Not one man was coming out and saying, I want to tell you what I did, how I did it, why I did it, what the impact of that is, and what the repercussions and how bad I feel about it and how I'm going to change I wasn't hearing one thing of that going on. And I suddenly went, you know what? I'm going to write my father's apology. I'm going to write what I need to hear. I'm going to write the words I wish my father had said to me, because I need to know what that would feel like. I need to know what my father did. I want to know why my father did what he did. I want to be free of my father, because even though my father was dead, I was in a constant angry dialogue with my father. I was still his victim. I was still walking around this world as a victim. And I was sick of being a victim. And I was sick of just hating men. I was sick of projecting this onto everybody. And so I went really into a cave, essentially. I went into my office for months and months. And it was like ventriloquism. I literally had to climb inside my father and try to imagine what had happened to him, what his voice was. And the weirdest thing started to happen is that my father, ancestor father, started to become very present. He was there. I'm telling you, he was there. He was around me. He would wake me up at 4:00 in the morning and say, go to your office. I have a story to tell you. I mean, I have never felt anything so clearly. Like, I summoned him, right? I called him in. And in some ways, I feel like we wrote that book together. And it was grueling. It was grueling, because part of what I had never wanted to know, which is what restorative justice would be about, is why did my father do what he did? What happened to him that would make him a man capable of being that cruel and that horrible to his own daughter? Like, what twisted thing went on in his life that had brought him to that? And so I had to listen to him tell me about his childhood and about his really vicious brother and about a culture that had taught him that he could basically do anything, and that charm so that was really, really hard. And there were times when I didn't want to hear it. I wanted him just to shut up. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to feel any empathy for him. And then I started to think, well, like, just surrender to this process. Just feel what is ever coming up. Feel your rage, feel your empathy. And when the book was finished, the last line of the book is "Old man be gone."
Oh man, be gone.
"Old
Yeah.
man be gone." And I don't know if my father wrote it or I wrote it or we wrote it, but the minute I wrote it, it was like this thing went shoo. Do you remember like Tinkerbell at the end of Peter Pan when she just went shoo into the cosmos?
Yeah.
It's like my father went shoo, and literally he was gone and he has never been back. And I really believe like we are always in relationship if we want to be with the dead. They are all around us. And many times the dead are trying to get free. They have not finished cleansing and healing and dealing with whatever shit they have done here. They have not finished working through things. And that sometimes we can actually write into connection with them. And it's funny because I knew I had to change my name after that. I had no more rancor towards my father. I have no more bitterness to I'm no longer my father's victim. I'm no longer in any relationship with my father. My father's gone. My father's gone. And I don't want his name. I didn't want his name anymore. I didn't want a name he gave me anymore. That was over. That story, that narrative, that part of my karmic existence was concluded. And so I released my name with my father, and it's been amazing ever since. But it really taught me the power of writing, the power of imagination, the power of communing with the dead, the power of being willing to step into the shoes of someone you despise, to hear what their history, their pain, their story is in order to understand it, not to discount it or not hold it accountable, because I was surely holding my father accountable every step of the way. But when you understand things, when you can grapple with things, when you can be free of them. So many of us who have been abused are held to our victimization because we cannot understand why that person could do what they did to us, why a person would rape us, why a person would be cruel to us because of the color of our skin, why a person would hurt us because we are disabled, why a person, we can go down the list. We just don't understand it. And so we are constantly saying, it must be me. What did I do? I must be wrong. And we're going, that motor's like constantly going. That's what trauma is. What did I do? What is this about? But when you begin to understand it, then you're like, oh, not about me, about my father. Not about me being bad, not about me being wrong, not about me being stupid, not about me being a jackass. It was my father. My father felt stupid. My father felt like a jackass. My father felt insecure. My father felt bad. So he just made that me because he couldn't tolerate what he was feeling. And once I knew that, it was like, oh, okay. And I think writing has the capacity to help us do that and to take those journeys and to make that understanding, you know?
The thing that's profound to me, V, is that you came to this after all the incredible work you had already done. And so can you talk about just your journey as a writer? You said you created Mr. Alligator when you were 9 or 10 years old, and you believe that's the beginning of you writing. Can you share some of your experiences that kind of led you? Like, what did the arts do for you? How did it help you, even in those years when you were angry and, as you said, despising your father and grappling with what you had to survive? And I think many of us in this group, not just here tonight, but in the Facebook group as well, the larger Facebook group, we've talked about these issues in our workshops. Am I right, you all? This has come up quite a bit, being survivors of all the kind of madness that you've talked about, and us blaming ourselves. Like, what was your journey like? How did it evolve?
Yeah, and I also just want to say to people, if you ever want to, writing that apology to yourself is a really profound thing.
Right.
I would do it with support. I would do it with a friend or a therapist, but it's profoundly liberating. It's profoundly liberating. You know, I was always writing when I was a kid. I had tons of journals. I was always writing because, you know, when my father would beat me up, he would always call me first, right? And because he'd usually be pretty drunk. And I would literally go into the mirror and I would talk to myself and I would be like, okay, you're going to go away from yourself now. You're not going to feel this. You're going to just go someplace else in your head. And when he beats you or whips you or punches you or throws you against the wall, you're just not going to feel anything. You're not going to cry. But I would also afterwards write, and I would write about it. I would talk about it. I would share my feelings to myself. Writing became a way of me creating an alternative persona who was not being beat up, who was not being a victim, who was not being destroyed, who actually who was a witness to all of this, who could see all this, who could survive all this. And I think it really began as a way of me, I'm about to, I have a collection that's coming out in 2023 of 40 years of writing, and it's called Reckoning Writing into Existence. And I think for me, when you're really badly abused, when you're beaten, when you're raped or sexually abused in an ongoing way, you really begin to disappear. You begin to disappear, like you separate from your body, you're someplace else. And I really felt like an invisible person. I didn't feel like I existed in the world. I had been erased to nothingness by my father's cruelty. And I think when I wrote, I was someone. I existed. I had a voice. I had ideas. I could see what I felt about what I was going through. And it began as a way of just writing myself into reality, writing myself into being, into existence. And then when I did that more and more, I began to feel like, wow, I have meaning. And I like this. I like what this feels like to be able to write. I don't like anything as much as writing. Even when it's torturous, it feels like the examination, the deepening, the empathy, the trying to understand or feel another person or become another person or climb into other feelings. It's just so profound and beautiful. And I think I wrote all the way through college. I wrote poems. And I remember when I got my first poem published, I had just gotten out of college, and the Chicago Tribune published my first poem, and it was a really big poetry journal in those days. And I remember like going to every bookstore in New York and getting
Which journal? Which journal?
The Chicago Review. Was it called the Chicago Review or the Chicago? It was like, I think it was called the Chicago Review, but it was a really big poetry journal in those days, and I couldn't believe it. And it was like I bought up every copy at every bookstore, and it was like, okay, maybe you can do this. Maybe you can actually do this as a life. And I think that started this process of beginning to write poems and loving poetry, but not feeling like anybody was really reading poetry. And because I have a really kind of political activist energy, and like I just feel I wanted to do something that would really be in the culture in a way that could activate people, that could change people, that would wake people up. Because I had so much anger, and I needed somehow to express my rage and my fury and my sorrow at living in a world that is so patriarchal, that is so racist, that is so unkind, that is so unequal, unfair, all the things that we all rage about on an everyday basis. And I think that really was a big part of me becoming a writer.
Who did you, well, I want to throw a question at you that came from the chat that I think is important. Do you still have what you wrote when those things happened to you as a child? Were you ever frightened that your father would find what you were writing?
Oh yeah, I was always terrified. But the thing about my father is he would never look because he had no interest. Do you know, my father wasn't paying attention to me. My father didn't care about what I thought. He didn't care what I thought. I was just I was non-existent in his world. After my father stopped abusing me sexually, after that ended, I remember the day it happened when I went from being his, what should I call it? His sexual object, to being somebody he just abused, because I was always a reminder to him of what he had done. So he was just going to try to destroy this thing. And my father almost murdered me twice. I mean, there were times when, so I didn't ever worry about him finding things, because that would have implied he had an interest in me, which he didn't.
For those who don't know, did you have siblings? Was your mother there? Was anyone aware of what was happening?
My mother was, I don't talk about my siblings because they're alive, and I feel like, but my mother My mother was for a long time my father's accomplice. My mother was also she came from a very poor family. She, she was a woman of her era and her time. She didn't believe she had a voice. My father had 4 children and she was one of them. Do you know what I mean? My
Wow.
father was a tyrant and a patriarch. And my mother, she said to me years later when I confronted her, which I'll never forget, she said, "You were my sacrifice. Like, I had been poor. I had 3 children. Where was I going if I left your father? And I basically sacrificed you so we could live in comfort. We could live an upper middle class life." And I remember when she said it to me, it was shocking, but I knew it. I
Wow.
knew it. I knew she had sacrificed me because she had never defended me and she had never stood up for me. And it took me many years to let go of that and to
Mm.
see her perspective and, to see that she didn't ever have the courage or strength or sense of self to believe she could create another life without my father.
Mm. I'm sitting here trying to hold back tears because I think any of us who, myself included, who have survived any kind of abuse, and I see it in the chat, there's a lot of responses to what you're saying because a lot of times, V and I have had a lot of one-on-one conversations, you all, and she has talked often about how we live in this is a traumatized world, and many of us don't even have the tools to navigate it. I mean, and we're just out there. What did you talked about how you got your poetry published. What did you read? I know for me as a child, reading was my escape. Was that
Definitely.
it for you?
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Can you talk about what you
Definitely.
read?
Well, yeah, this is going to sound really funny, but when I was a child, I was so traumatized, and I think trauma affects everybody differently, but
Yeah.
trauma affected me in that I couldn't think very well. um, I was so in fear and I was so in terror all the time. And I couldn't take exams, for example. Like if you said to me, how much is 2 + 2? I would say 4. And then someone would ask me on a test and I wouldn't know because I was being tested,
Mm.
because that meant my father would beat me. And there was going to be, so I read 2 books over and over. And one of them was Hiroshima by John Hershey.
Wow.
And the other was Death Be Not Proud by John Gunther.
Mm.
And Hiroshima, for those of you who don't know, is this amazing book which tells the stories of many survivors of the Hiroshima bomb and what they went through on that day. And I think that book was so resonant to me because I felt like I was living in the middle, psychologically and fundamentally, of a nuclear war every
Mm.
day. Like I felt it was just explosive. It was annihilating. It could just destroy me at any moment. And there was something comforting, ironically, about reading about people who had survived that, even though they were burned and they had scars and things were, I mean, so that was one book. And the other book was Death Be Not Proud, which was the story of a young boy who had a brain tumor
Mm.
and he dies over time, but he dies nobly. And I don't know why I identified with this book. Maybe it was that I felt like some part of my brain had already been, you know, I don't know, like taken out of my head or had been cut off but then I think when I got older and I started to really read, in my teens and in my 20s, like reading James Baldwin was a huge factor in my life.
Mm.
Reading Samuel Beckett, for example, like just the landscape of existential, like abyss, was hugely profound in my life. Many female writers. I mean, obviously, I think Toni Morrison has had one of the greatest impacts on me of any writer. Virginia Woolf, Walt Whitman. I mean, I just feel like we can keep going, but I think what started to happen when I got to college and I began to really read, and I began to read Pablo Neruda, and I began to read Latin American writers, and I began
Mm.
to read feminist writers, and Simone de Beauvoir, and like all those doors started to open. It was like, oh my God, the possibility of liberation exists. You don't have to live inside this world that is so dark and so
Mm.
so terrified, so scary. I lived in dread, and literature was the way to like burst out of that bubble of dread. So yes.
Wow. I want to unpack this a little bit. You mentioned
Good luck.
I'm taking lots of notes. But I want to unpack because you mentioned Samuel Beckett, James Baldwin, Toni Morrison. If those three for a second, what specifically about those three? And if you want to talk about other writers as well, like what was it about those writers that just fed your soul, fed your spirit?
Well, James Baldwin, I probably will say, is my favorite writer of all times.
Mm.
And possibly because he speaks a truth that is so undeniable, and he speaks it in language that is so gorgeous.
Yeah.
And I think his understanding of white people, his understanding of, I heard Mark Lamont Hill say something so brilliant the other day on Instagram, which was that why did slavery become the problem of Black people
Mm.
when it was the problem of white people, right?
Mm.
And it was just such a brilliant idea. And I think what James Baldwin really got me to understand is like how responsible white people are, and the milieu that white people grew up in that made us who we were. And it's inescapable in any way. It's like fundamental to who we are if you grew up in this country. It just, or really anywhere, let's face it, but in this country. And also, I just felt like his books were just so real, and people were so complicated and so rich and so sexual and so alive. And so that was just a revelation. Toni Morrison, I just think, is a genius beyond genius. Like, she lives on some other plane of existence. And I can remember reading Beloved, reading Song of Solomon, and feeling like I was having an astral experience, like I had gone to some other plane of just like her ability to inhabit people, her ability to express, her ability to tell stories through characters that had major themes, but were coming out of human beings, just blew me away.
Mm.
And I think Samuel Beckett, for me, I can't go on, I will go on. I can't go on. It's like living on this edge of impossibility, but you still keep going. You find the absurd, you find the weird, you find the bizarre, and you still keep finding a way to keep going. Had a profound influence on me. And then if I look at Whitman, for example, I think
Walt Whitman.
Just the notion of multitudes, the notion of I contain multitudes. The idea of feminine and masculine all in one being, the idea of blending with the earth and becoming, he's just just an amazing writer, just language, just saying the words, the trumpets and the scrumpets and I love literature. I just love everything about it. Particularly good literature,
When did you first say aloud or to yourself, I am a writer? Do you remember when you said it?
That's a good question. You say it to yourself, but you don't really mean it. you know what I mean? Like, you tell yourself it's true. And I think, if I'm really honest about it, it was really the Vagina Monologues that it was like, I believed I was a writer, and I thought I could make my way as a writer, but the Vagina Monologues kind of sealed the deal. It was like, I'm a writer. This has happened. You know what I mean? And I think part of it was because the Vagina Monologues were in some ways such a surprise to me. Like, I didn't set out to write a play about vaginas, and I was already like a way downtown playwright. had written a play about homeless women. I'd written a play about nuclear war. And it was just keeping me progressively marginalized, being political and writing about these things. So to think, oh, I'm going to write a play now about vaginas, it was not on the top of my list. It was like, well, that will do the deal. But there was something about, once I started listening to women telling me stories, which all the Vagina Monologues are fictional pieces, but they're based on real people. Like, it's like I put stories and I listen and I listen and I listen, and then themes would evolve, or one sentence would evolve, or one idea would evolve, and that would lead me to write a monologue. And I think there was something about that piece and writing it. And once I wrote it and once I started to perform it, the response was so immediate, and it was so massive, and it was so profound, that I thought, I'm doing it. I'm communicating. I'm
Mhm.
communicating something to people and they're responding to it. So I must be a writer. This must be what writing is. You know, like I'm doing that, you know.
How did you start? What was your process for putting together the Vagina Monologues?
It was really funny because it was all very accidental. I was talking to a woman who was going through menopause. She was a forward-thinking woman. She was a feminist, and she just started talking about her vagina, how it was dried up and prune-like and finished and dead. And I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. And I was shocked that this feminist was talking this way about her vagina. And so I thought, well, I don't really know anything about vaginas. What do women think about vaginas? So I said to a friend of mine, well, what do you think about your vagina? And she said, well, my mother used to tell me, don't wear panties underneath your pajamas. You need to air out your pussycat. And I went, oh my God. And that was really the beginning. It was like, and then I would just say, you know, one woman would say, oh, you should talk to so-and-so. She has an amazing story about her vagina and you should talk to her. You know how women are. And everybody I talked to would tell me stories. First of all, they'd never told anyone before.
Mm.
They were so surprising. They were so weird. They were so wonderful. They were so horrible. They were so everything that I would just take notes. You know what I mean? I would just write it down. And before I knew it, I had like a lot of information. But then I talked to this woman who was an older woman. And she told me that she'd had a humiliating experience when she was a young woman in her 20s and she had never had sex again.
Wow.
And I went, I'm going to write a play. I'm going to write a play. I'm going to write these stories. I don't care if I'm downtown forever. Like, I have to tell these stories. Like, if somebody didn't have sex their whole life because a man humiliated her, like, this has to stop. This has to stop. We have to talk about it. So then I began to write it seriously. And what I would do is I would just interview women. I would take notes. I would, you know, interview somebody who had like 10 women would talk to me about hair and how impossible hair is and the notion of hair. And then I would say, I just go hair, do a monologue about hair, right? Or other women would talk to me about the gynecologist, right? And it was like, do that. And then I just started this process. And then when I started to perform them, women would line up after the shows to tell me their stories.
Wow.
And at first I thought, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to hear about wonderful orgasms and great sex lives. And in fact, they were telling me how they've been raped. When they tell me how they've been incested, and they were telling me how they've been cut and abused. And that was unbelievable. And that really provoked me to write more and more and to say, this has to be in the world. We have to stop this violence. Because look, I knew there was violence. I had been violated, but I had no idea at that point, 25 years ago, what an epidemic it was, that 1 out of 3 women on this planet will be beaten or raped. I had no idea. It was unknown proportions.
You know, you talked about poetry in the beginning, and now we're talking about plays. Did you ever say, I'm going to write in this genre, that genre? How did you come to all these genres of writing? Because you've written in so many different forms.
Everything's been kind of organic. Like I was going to go. I actually got accepted into Yale Drama School, and I was going to go to professional writing schools. And to be honest with you, I had no way of paying for it. And my father refused to pay when I got accepted into Yale Drama School. And because my father had enough money to send me, they wouldn't give me a scholarship, so I couldn't go. So that kind of, I lost that track that a lot of people get on, which is going to writing programs or going to theater programs. So I just was pushed into New York City. I became a waitress for 9 years. I had to sink or swim. I had to find my way. My father on graduation gave me a check for $1,000, shook my hand and said, have a good life. And he never gave me another penny.
Wow.
And in some ways it was really horrifying to be on your own and to, at 23, but on another hand, like I had to find my way. I had to figure it out. So much of my writing life was just, I wrote what I was feeling. I wrote what was happening. I remember in the Reagan years walking down the streets and constantly seeing homeless people. And a friend of mine said, come to this shelter, come, let's go volunteer at the shelter. And I was like, I don't want to go to the shelter because I'm going to get totally involved with homeless women. And I'm already involved with the disarmament movement. And she was like, just come once. And of course I went once, and 8 years later, And being at that shelter and being with homeless women for 8 years blew my mind. And I ran groups there and I listened to stories every day. And I wrote a play called Ladies about homeless women that then got done, at music theater group. And it was an amazing experience where we brought tons of homeless women and women told their stories. But it's been like that. So then that led me to write about whatever the next thing was that I was obsessing about or raging about, or, keeping me up at night, I mean, I think themes and I think passions have been the things that have guided my work, right? Whether it's obsessing about my stomach when I was 40 and thinking, I cannot believe that I'm spending this much time thinking about my stomach. So I wrote The Good Body and I traveled around the world interviewing women everywhere on this planet about their bodies, which was incredible. You know what I mean? Because I was interested in how to get rid of that and how was I going to resolve this conflict? And what's at the core of that? What's at the core of that obsession? Of course, it was capitalism. And of course, it was these ideal images of women that we're supposed to live up to, that who we're supposed to be, that were perpetuated by a capitalist system that is constantly making us feel like our bodies are broken, when in fact, our bodies were never broken and there's nothing to fix. Our bodies are unbelievable, beautiful creatures that walk us and move us through the world and keep us alive and get us to have beautiful sex and get us to have touch and connection. And all we're busy doing in this culture is fixing them and starving them and shutting them down. And so that was a really amazing experience just to take that journey, and I think everything I've written has come out of that. I became obsessed with girls at one point, just obsessed with girls in the world, just how powerful they are and how they know everything and how they're like such a source of the future. And so I just started writing and traveling and talking to girls around the world. And I wrote Emotional Creature out of that. But it's always been about people, it seems to me, and people who I feel are in struggle and people who, when the Bosnian War was happening and I went and I spent months at a center in the former Yugoslavia, which was actually taking care of Serbs and Croatians and Muslim Serbs and Croatians in the same center. And I was obsessed that there are these rape camps in the middle of Europe. And I went and I met women and I sat with women who had been in the rape camps. And that was really the beginning of me awakening to violence against women. You know what I mean? It was really my awakening to what
decade, what period of time was that?
That was 1994 when that Bosnian War was happening. And I went during the war and I sat with rape survivors in refugees camps, and I listened to their stories, and Necessary Targets grew out of that. And so did the monologue and the Vagina Monologues, My Vagina is My Village. And so I think it's really just like concerns, like what came up that I was caring about or what I was obsessing about, is really, I think, where most of my work has come from,
It begs the question, I'm curious, if you could define what a writer is for you, and also what is an activist to you, because you are both. What is a writer? What is an activist? And why is it important for you to be both?
Well, I'm always really concerned about this bifurcation of those two.
Yeah.
It bugs me. All writing is political. All writing. If you write a Hollywood musical that is about pure entertainment, that's a political choice to keep people away from thinking about what's happening in the culture. That's a neoliberal choice, right? Fine, it's a choice, but that's a political choice. What this culture always does is define what is left as political, not what is right as political, because what's right is assumed as the normal way. But if you actually resist the culture, you're termed political, when in fact, we're all political. Political, as Adrienne Rich once described, is the moment a feeling enters the body. That is political. That is what political means. So I don't know that I really feel there is a difference between me being an activist and me being a writer. I don't like that, you know what I mean? Like, I think as far as playwriting goes, and that's mainly what I do, playwriting is activation, right? It's you're putting drama on a stage. People are interacting with each other, and they're interacting with you, the audience. You are creating this together. That is activism. That is activity, right? You're making something together. So I think I think there's all kinds of writing, but even those who pretend not to have a political point of view have a political point. It's inescapable, right? There's nothing neutral. Nobody's neutral. When they talk about journalism being objective, it's a hysterical idea. There is no objectivity. It's flowing through your brain.
That's
like,
right.
Even what you choose to put your attention on, or what you choose to think is important, or what you choose to focus on, or the person who you think is interesting is a subjective choice. So I think, I'll tell you a story about Joanne Woodward. And for those of you young people out there who probably don't know who Joanne Woodward is, you should. She was an amazing actress, and she was married to Paul Newman, and she was one of my mentors, and one of the reasons I'm here today.
Wow.
And when I was very young, I was obsessed with Joanne Woodward because she was in a movie with Sally Field called Sybil. And Sybil was a person who had multiple personalities because she had been terribly abused by her mother. And she went to Joanne Woodward as her therapist, and Joanne Woodward took care of her and called her sweetie. And I identified with Sally Field's character so deeply, it was scary. Like all the abuse, all the craziness, all the multiple personalities. And I dreamed of Joanne Woodward holding me in her lap and calling me sweetie. It was like an ongoing thing. So cut 2 years later, my adopted son was in acting school, and he had her as a teacher. And I was like,
Can you say who your adopted son was?
Oh, my adopted son is Dylan McDermott, the actor, but he wasn't Dylan McDermott when I adopted him. That was a long journey. And I was married to his father, and his mother had been murdered. And when I met Dylan at 15, I fell in love with him, and I adopted him, and he became my son. And I actually went to court, and I legally adopted him. But anyway, and I sent him to acting school because he was very talented. I could just tell when he was 15. And he had Joanne Woodward as his teacher. So I was like, oh my God, Joanne Woodward is your teacher. I said, you have to go and you have to bring her my play, and you just have to ask her to read it. That's all. It was a play I had written. And she read it, and she liked it, and she did a reading of it with all her students. So then I had her attention, and it was the time of Reagan and nuclear war. And he was saying that a nuclear war was winnable, and that administration was serving ketchup to people, and they were telling them it was food. It was just like the craziest. So I said, what if I wrote you a play about nuclear war? And she said, well, why don't you write me a few speeches first? So I wrote her some speeches, and she liked the speeches. And then I said, I'll write you a play. So I wrote her a play. And I just remember this so like yesterday. So I had the first draft of the play, and I was really, really scared, so scared to give it to her. Like she was going to be like, I'm not doing this play. And I handed it to her, and she called me up, and she said to me, called me into her office, and she said to me, Eve, the characters are good. The situation is good. The story is good. But you know what, Eve? It's not funny. It's just not funny. You're funny. I said, it's about nuclear war. She said, I know, but make it funny. Make it funny. And then people will be able to hear it. And I'll tell you something. It was the greatest thing anyone ever taught me. Because at that point, I was so strident. I was so militant. I was so unable to trust that a reader could figure out their own opinion, that I was like beating them over the head with my politics. This is what you're going to think because I think this is, and it wasn't working. It was just too much. But the minute she told me, make it funny, then I could begin to tell the story in a way where people were laughing and they could hear the message, they could get the politics, but I wasn't pushing it at them or smashing it at them. And I have to think, I think humor is critical. It's critical in writing, particularly writing that is overtly political, because people can hear it. People, when you don't take yourself so seriously, when you allow for the, kind of just irony. Who am I? What is this? It's, people can then come into a space where they don't feel judged, where they don't feel like you're looking down at them, where they don't feel like you're better than them, but where you're all in this story together. in this mess together, which is life, you know? And I mean, that's one of the reasons I love Beckett. That's one of the reasons I love Dario Fo. That's one of the reasons I love Shakespeare. I mean, humor, funny. Like, how do you make it funny so that, I think Dario Fo once said, when your eyes are open and your mouth is laughing, all the ideas can come into you without you even knowing it, you know? I think that's a paraphrase, by the way.
My gosh, I have so many questions. I want to get to questions from folks. Folks, please start putting some of the questions in the chat, but also I'll let you know when you can start raising your hands to ask questions as well. We try to always make sure this is a democratic space fee for all the voices to be heard.
I love that.
A couple of things that it's a wealth of information. You were a waitress for 9 years. Can you talk about the journey? Because this has come up a lot with us as writers, like what kept you going as you had to deal with your financial life? What kept you going, you know, in the harshest parts of of your journey? What kept you going?
That's such a good question, Kev. You know, rage. I think, you know, we were talking the other night, I was having this really interesting discussion about will and about what drives us, what keeps us going. And I never dreamed, to be honest with you, that I would make money off writing. I never dreamed, to be honest, that I'd be famous. I never dreamed. I just want to write. I just wanted to write. I wanted to write. I wanted to write. I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to manifest people and highlight people and think about people that nobody else was thinking about. I wanted to make the visible, right? Like, often I would, when I was growing up, what was right in front of people, nobody was talking about. People were hurting and suffering all around and no one was looking at them. I was dying in front of people and no one seemed to care, right? So it was like, how do you make the visible to people? And that's one piece. The second piece is that because I didn't expect to make money off writing, I was never really disappointed when I didn't. Do you know what I mean? It was like, I didn't have this high expectation. You know, when I wrote the Vagina Monologues, just so you all know this, I was in my 40s. I was making $18,000 a year.
Wow.
Right? Okay.
Wow.
I had no money. I had no credit cards because I didn't believe in banks. Okay. And I didn't want to be part of the capitalist system. All right. It was totally flukish that of all the things I'd ever written, the Vagina Monologues suddenly became this huge hit. And it was really hard at the beginning, to be honest with you, because I don't know that I wanted money. I was scared of money. I didn't know what to do with money. I didn't know what to do with being known or having any kind of recognition. It almost like it scared me. I lived in my own little world where I went to the library every day and I wrote for 5 hours and I had my little spot at the New York Public Library and nobody knew me. And I liked that. And then coming out into the world and suddenly being known, then there's pressure and what are you going to do next? And blah, 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 all that stuff starts to happen. But I think, and look, if you had told me that the Vagina Monologues would have made me enough money to buy a house, you know, apartment, I would have told you were kidding. It just seems like some fairy tale, some vagina fable that happened, you know. So it's not even, it's not explicable in the normal, you know, run of you know, in the normal world. But I think also part of it is like, I think you have to ask yourself why you're writing. Why are you writing? For me, it's about your intention. What is your intention? What stories are you telling for what reason? What do you want people to know and why? What's driving you? Is it that you want people to be able to feel beauty and hear beauty and taste beauty in a way they have never tasted it before? Is it because you want to write about issues that people have not examined and they need to examine? Is it because there is a character who has possessed your heart and you need to tell the story of that character? I think sometimes people just start writing and they don't know why or what is at the core of their intention. And it's very hard to, you know, string a clothesline when it doesn't have attachment on either end, you know, to what is that pulse, what is that thing that you're passionate about, that is driving you. if I look at everything I've ever written, particularly things that have done well, it's because whatever that passion was, it's come through the piece, and that's what people have gotten attached to, you know, that thing that was driving me. And I think writing is it's an Olympic sport. It's Olympic sport. You have to have muscle, you have to have grit, you have to have energy, you have to have physical prowess, you have to have stamina, you have to rewrite, because writing is really just rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. And you have to love deeply. You have to love your characters, you have to love language, you have to love the process, you have to love the agony, and much of writing is agony. It's the loneliest thing in the world. You have to be alone. You know, I've been alone, honestly, 80% of my life. 80% of my life, I've been alone in a room writing. And it's agonizing, that loneliness. There are times when it's unbearable, that loneliness. And you have to want to do it more than anything in the whole wide world. It has to give you, it's like I would be dead if I wasn't writing. I'd be in a mental institution if I wasn't writing. I would have cracked up a long time ago. I know that. I don't have any, you know, I always joke, people who were loved got concrete floors, you know, at the base of their existence. I have bamboo shoots, and when it rains, they fall away. And I can fall through that floor. I don't have illusions, you know, all the therapy I've been through, all the healing I've been through. I'm still at my core a person who was wildly traumatized and abused. And that doesn't mean I don't walk through the world with great joy and happiness, but I know, you know, and so part of it is I know that when I write, I am healed. When I write, I am safe. When I write, I feel I exist. And so for me, it's a necessary occupation, you know?
You said the importance of humor. One of the writers wrote, Siobhan, vaginas buy houses, y'all, which is funny.
They do. I always joke about it. My vagina loft.
Cheryl asked a question about how did your father see your success? Cheryl, I think you came in a little bit later, but V, your father has been dead since the early 90s, before the Vagina
He didn't
Monologues.
see my success, and he would not have been happy about it.
I can imagine. Wow. Then Rashonda, and please raise your hands, y'all, if you have questions. Where's Rashonda? Rashonda, are you there? Rashonda,
I'm here.
just ask the question.
I was muted.
Can you?
Hi, V. How are you?
Hi, Rashonda.
Hi, I was just wondering, where do you get your strength from? You tell your stories so truthfully. I kind of wish I had that in my storytelling. I have a lot of truths, but I'm not as comfortable with being as vulnerable as you've displayed. So where do you pull your strength from?
Good question. I think there's several forces, you know. Now, lately, I'm very, very, very connected to the earth. I'm very connected to the mother. And by that, I mean the earth. I feel like I moved to the woods 6 years ago, and I live in her embrace now. I live in her realm. I live in her queendom. And lately, I've really been feeling how blessed it is to live amongst the trees, to live in open sky, to live where there's stars, to live where there's turtles and coyotes and deer and bears. And so I get a lot of strength from there. And it gives me a sense of my right sizeness, right? I'm small. I'm small in the face of that. And I like being small. I like having my small place within the gorgeousness of what she has created. I think my other strength really comes from my sisters. And, you know, I'm in a movement, an amazing movement across this planet. And I have the most amazing sisters in Congo, in Kenya, in Afghanistan, in Italy, in Croatia, in Swaziland, in India. And that solidarity, that I know I am in struggle with those women for now, some of them 20 years, where we are fighting for the liberation, an end to racist patriarchy, an end to, you know, an end to a world where workers and women and trans and every person who's been marginalized is not respected and not honored and not seen, that we are joined in this struggle to transform that, I feel strong. I feel strong. I feel so, so strong. And I think we underestimate, because this country is so neoliberal, because we are so taught to be individualistic, to fight for our own and get our own piece of the pie and take care of ourselves. We're also cut off from each other. We're also lonely. We don't know what solidarity is. We don't know what it means to, like, you're having a success. I am with you. I am rising for you. And I know you'll do the same for me. And we're going to rise together and we're going to lift each other up. So I get a lot of strength from that. And I think friendship, writing, I get a lot of strength from writing, and my dog. I love my dog.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let me say this to folks. Amanda G, Lajira, Twyla, Umi, I see your questions. If you wouldn't mind, I'd love you all to ask your questions. If you're comfortable doing it, just put in the chat if you are. But Wanda and Indigo are next with questions for V. And this is, you're good, V? Are you good?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I love y'all.
Love you. We love you. Wanda, then Indigo, please.
Hey, Miss V, thank you for being with us. I am so sorry. Just loving everything you are saying.
Oh, Wanda, I wish I could hug you.
And giving to us, but I want to know, how do you deal with your flashbacks? And thank you.
Thank you, Wanda.
I don't have too many anymore. I did for a long time. Don't fight them. Don't fight them. Let them happen. They'll teach you things. They'll show you things. Don't be afraid of your past, because your past is over. Your past is over. It can't hurt you anymore. And I really know that now. I think I got a real insight, for example, a couple days ago, actually yesterday, when I realized that when people are mean to you and cruel to you, I used to think they knew something about me I didn't know. Like something was really wrong with me and I was really bad. I always felt like I was bad, I was really, really bad. And I had to prove to people I was good. I was just always proving. And then I realized that people make you feel bad because they feel bad, right? They have something in them they haven't resolved. And so they project it onto you and then they start to hurt you. And one of the things that I realized is I had a flash of my father always calling me stupid. Every day of my life, he called me stupid. And it's something I've really had to work on, is feeling I'm stupid, no matter what happens. I have every achievement in the world and I can show you the person over there will know that I'm stupid and that's the person who's right, right? And yesterday I suddenly went, just look at that. Look at what he said. Go back there. Were you stupid? Were you? So when you have flashbacks, there's an opportunity to reevaluate, to reframe, to re-see what actually happened. So if you're fighting it and you're pushing it away because you think it's going to kill you, you can't learn from it. But if you invite it and you say, show me it. Let me see this scene. Let me see what happened. Then you can begin to go, oh, wait, I was doing that. And they were doing that. They were doing this. It's not going to kill you. It's not going to kill you. And I think once we realize that the past can't kill us, we can begin to walk through it. As long as it has us in its grip and it is convincing us that it's going to destroy us again, it has us. But once you realize it can't, it's over. It's done. My mother said to me after I confronted her about my father, which was really scary, and I told her what he had done to me. Months later, she called me up one day and she said, she was crying. And she said, what if when I die, your father's there and he's really mad at me that I believed you?
Wow.
And I dig that. My mother was worried about what my dead father was going to do when she met up with him later. Talk about trauma, right? And I just said, you know what? Send him to me, Mom. Send him to me. I'm more than willing to talk to him because I'm not afraid of him anymore. Right? The reason my mother was so scared is that she had never been willing to look back at what had happened to her What had happened in our family, there was just denial, 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 denial. When you have denial, you're caught. You're forever caught because denial keeps you caught. When you are willing to face it, when you're willing to walk through it, you walk through it. You walk through it, it's done, right? And I think part of what all of us have to do is work with people, find people who are not afraid of our trauma, who are willing to walk through it with us so we can be free, right? It's so critical because we are prisoners to what we do not know. We are prisoners to unexamined history. And as writers, we have to know everything. We have to know everything because if you don't know where you have been, you will be afraid to go where others are going because everything brings you back to your own stuff, right? So you'll only go so deep as a writer. You'll be shallow as a writer because you can't go too deep because it will get you right to your own thing, right? So don't be afraid of it. You're strong enough to handle what happened to you. You're strong enough. I know you are, Wanda. I'm looking at you, you know?
Oh, Wanda's dope.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Wow. Indigo, do you still want to speak?
I would love to.
Please.
Thank you. V, I just appreciate this space with you so much. And thank you, Kevin, for setting this up. And I got this email. I'm so honored to be here.
Thank you for being here.
Yes,
Thank you,
and
Indigo, what a beautiful name.
thank you. And V, like you are kind of woven into my healing process as a survivor. Growing up, having experienced molestation as a child, I kind of always had a different experience with my sexuality and just that, you know, as so many of us can relate. And actually, when I finally decided to have sex in my life, I've never called it I lost my virginity, actually, because I've always seen it as I gained my sex life. And it was a night after I seen the Vagina Monologues.
Oh, yes.
Feeling safe and I was feeling seen and I was ready. And so that was a beautiful part of my experience. But the apology also changed my life as a writer and made me see myself as even more valid as a survivor and the things that I'm writing about. So quickly to my question is
Thank you for that.
Yes, thank you. So I'm an abolitionist and I believe in the end of prison the end of prisons. And I'm also a survivor. I am also working on my own forgiveness journey. And I recently kind of like helped a company that I own part of switch to this idea of forgive everyone to for everyone. And I did that because as a survivor, I don't think we have to necessarily be ready to forgive in order to believe in abolition and to believe in the end of prisons, to believe in a better way towards transformative justice. So I just wanted to know your thoughts as at the intersection of abolition as well as being a survivor of egregious harm.
It's such a good question. Somebody was saying the other word, you should break those words up, forgiving and forgetting. You know, it's just interesting. One's for taking, one's for giving, you know, forgiving, forgetting, right? But this is what I feel. I don't know what I feel about forgiveness. I sometimes think it's a lot of holy-poly stuff. I think this is what I think happens. This is what my process has been. I don't know if I'm even in a position to forgive anyone. I don't think that's my role. And I don't think it's called upon anybody to have to forgive, there's no mandate to forgive, right? What happened with me and my father is I got clean. I came to understand what made my father do what he did. I came to understand who he was. I came to understand who I was, and it was over. Do I forgive my father? I don't know. I don't even care. Whatever that process was, it released him. It freed me and it freed him as far as I'm concerned. And I think sometimes I hear people telling survivors, like we at City of Joy in the Congo, which is the center we opened, it's an amazing place. We never talk about forgiveness. It's not up to survivors to have to forgive. That's just another pressure. That's like after you've been abused and after people have, you know, done all the things to you, then you have to forgive them. No, I don't believe that. But if you go through a process where you come to understand who they are, what they've done, and you work that out inside yourself, and that person actually apologizes to you and does the work of looking at their self and figuring out why they did what they did and taking responsibility for it, I think you can come to peace. You can come to release. You can come to walk away, and they can walk away, and you can go on. And I think that's pretty damn good. I think that's a pretty high place to get to. Forgiveness feels just very religious to me, and it just feels very caught up in have tos and the right thing to do. And if you were good, you would forgive. And I just think that's a pressure people don't know. They just don't need. You know what I mean? You know, when I was doing the apology tour, I was in Italy, and there's this brilliant woman who we did this conversation one night, and she started it out by saying, "Okay, we're survivors. We get raped. Then we got to talk about it." And then she said to me, "And now we got to write their own apologies for them." Right. And I laughed so hard. Right. But like, I knew what she was saying. It's like, do we have to do it all? We have to forgive. We have to, you know, it's like we have to move out of the house when they beat us. We have to go to the shelter. We have to, why do we have to do all the work? Why don't they move out of the house? You know, there's so many things, like I've just never understood why it's all on us. So I feel like forgiveness kind of fits into that. You know, if you want to forgive, forgive, but I'm not even sure I know and I think people do a lot of premature forgiving. I see it all the time. You know, I've forgiven him. No, you haven't. You haven't even done the work, honey. You haven't even gone into the pain. You haven't even addressed what happened to you. So how can you forgive him? Right.
Exactly.
And you're going to be in another bad relationship in 6 months. I promise you, because you forgave him. Right. Whatever that means. You know, forgiveness, that process of really, really getting down to a place where you can release your perpetrator. That is a deep work. It takes years. It takes years. And it's not like you can just go and say, "Oh, I forgive him." And it's not like that, because trauma is in every cell of your body, every cell of your being. And it takes years for you to expurgate it. Years. And it's a worthy journey. It's what we're all doing here. Who on this planet isn't traumatized? You know, even if you're the perpetrator, you're traumatized because you did the traumatizing, right? So there's nobody on this planet who isn't traumatized, right? Just assume the person sitting next to you is traumatized. That's what I do. Right.
Wow. Wow. Whew. Vajira, Kiki, Umi.
First of all, B, let me thank you. I have no questions. I was just listening to a couple of things that you said, like writing is political, something I've been saying. I always say writing is dangerous. That's my thought about it. There's nothing or no person that is neutral. And ask yourself why you're writing. Because as I said in the chat, I was writing a book called Theft of Trust, and it was about a child being molested and what she does afterwards. And it was such why was I writing that book? It's never happened to me, but why did that story come out the way it did? And it was very interesting to go through what she might have felt, because this is an imagination of what she might have felt. I'm not there, but I figured and then after I wrote it and told a lot of friends about it, every woman I was talking to was told me they had been molested. Yeah, so that was guess why I was writing the book.
Exactly.
Without knowing. Yeah. But I do thank you, and gives me more stuff to think about, which I need more things. And one other thing is, let me say, you're awesome, as is everybody here, because that's my favorite word. I am awesome. I'm going to be awesome no matter what. So I feel everybody else is awesome.
Thank you. I love you. Thank you so much.
Can you just tell V real quick the 2 books you just finished? Like really quick descriptions of them, quick.
Theft of Honor.
Yes.
Which is about a police officer who gets his comeuppance, and a police officer whose lover is dying and she doesn't know. And her former lover is being abused and she knows, but the woman decides she can handle it. I can handle it. Yeah, right. The other one is a speculative fiction book, taking these same characters and having them steal a prototype star cruiser named the Frederick Douglass to go to another planet because we are turning into a dictatorship.
Oh, wow. Wow. Amazing. Well, I think you're pretty accurate on that one.
I started writing that last book. I actually started writing 5 years ago. So it's just really interesting.
Oh,
Thank
well, I
you.
really look forward to seeing them and reading them. So
I
yeah.
really look forward to getting them published. I'm working
Okay.
at it.
Okay.
We are.
Thank you.
Thank
you,
you.
Vagina. We have Kiki, Umi, and Evangeline. I see you all. And I'm going to try to get the questions in the chat as well. Kiki.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, V. So much of what you said resonated with me, and I was just putting stuff in a chat. So I just have a thank you. And I'm a 64-year-old lesbian who got married 2 years ago. And however, while I was on retreat, I received a text message from my wife, who is a survivor of horrific sexual abuse, saying that she wanted a divorce. So I am going through a divorce now. And your words and you talking about the apology, your book, The Apology, I had the same sort of feelings. What did I do wrong? How can I fix it? How am I bad? Because the things that she was saying to me when we finally talked did not resonate with me. And your words, one, gave me the power to realize that I can write the apology. I can write the apology to her, and I did nothing wrong. And it's just so powerful and such a blessing. Thank you very much.
Kiki, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. But you know, I think sometimes when people have their memories, they just go into a space where they can't see anything for a while. It's like they're in it. They're in it. They're just in that story. And, you know, they project and it's like gunshots. It's like all over the place. Do you know what I mean? It's scattershot. And I think your work is to really do exactly what you're doing, to know you didn't do anything and to be okay with that. And to let her be okay with whatever she's going through and to just say, that's what it is right now. You don't know where it's going. You don't know what's going to happen. But the main thing is not to hurt yourself, not to beat yourself up,
Exactly.
not to be unkind to you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I actually reached out to her while we were on this conversation and mentioned you and the apology. And she responded and said, thank you.
Okay, there you go.
So
there you go. There you
yes.
go.
Thank you, V. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, community.
You are, you know.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you.
And V, Kiki's in the Bay Area. She's one of our great journalists in the community out there. So I just want to say that. That's why I'm asking folks to kind of acknowledge the work.
Thank you, V. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kiki. Umi, then Evangeline. Hey y'all.
Hi. Hey. Hello, V. I'm in addition to being an aspiring writer, I'm also a son of.
What do we say?
I'm sorry, I made a mistake. In addition to being a writer,
yes,
published writer, I'm also a sign language interpreter, and the Vagina Monologues is one of my favorite pieces to interpret, especially with a mixed other way.
That's right.
Wait, what does that mean? What does that mean for the rest of us?
Vagina.
Got it.
But you don't do it up here. You do it.
Yeah, do it down here. But I had to
here where your vagina is. So that's like really one of my favorite pieces, especially with a hearing and deaf cast. It's a lot of fun.
Beautiful. It's so beautiful. I've seen several productions. It's gorgeous.
My question for you is, given the hard work that you do, what is your daily self-care routine?
Great question. Wow.
Well, it's much different now than it used to be. I'll tell you that. Because 12 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 3/4 uterine cancer, and I almost died. And I had lots of organs removed and 70 nodes removed, and it was rough. But it was my awakening. It was my awakening. I was just listening to stories all the time. I was traveling the world. I was putting myself in very, very precarious situations, and I wasn't protecting myself at all. And I think I moved to the country. So I live with the trees. 2, I really make sure that I eat a really, really, really healthy diet. I have massages. I sit in hot water whenever I can, in any place I can. And I take time to walk in the woods, walk with the trees, walk with the earth. I put my body on the earth a lot. And I really make time with my family. I make time to cook. I cook a lot. COVID, I became a really good cook. I can make you the best chicken tangine you've ever had. You know, I feel like I want to do things that nurture myself and other people. Do you know what I mean? And to take the time for nurturance, to take the time out of every day to make sure, how am I nurturing somebody? What am I doing? How am I doing? I really believe that my body was so kind to me, and I'm going to start crying just saying this, that it let me live. I have no business being alive. I know that. So for me to violate this body, you know, I for some reason, I know this is going to sound so crazy. I started smoking after I had cancer. It was the craziest thing in the whole world. And I quit. But part of it was like, I was feeling so much new energy. So much new energy was coming into my body. I did not know how to handle it. It was just too much. And when I smoked, it dampened the energy. And then I thought, why can't you handle this energy? Just put the cigarettes down and go and feel what this energy feels like. And if you're too intense, people will just move away from you, you know? So part of it is like, how do I take care of this body? How do I love this body? I exercise, I lift weights, I take walks, I make sure my body is this is our beautiful shell, this is our beautiful castle, this is our beautiful cathedral that we live in. And we don't want it dirty, and we won't want to put messy things that mess it up and make it feel bad. We want it to be beautiful. So how do we do that? And it requires time. And it requires saying, I've done a lot of work today and I can stop. You know, I can get off the computer. I can put my eyes on someone else's eyes, or put my eyes on the sky, or put my eyes in another direction on the horizon, you know?
I need to say this, when I saw, we're listing 4 of your books for folks to support tonight. And in addition to V-Day, your organization, when I saw the play, theatrical version of In the Body of the World, it blew my mind, you all. Is there a video of it anywhere that folks can watch?
No, there's not. We may be doing a film of it though, so that may be happening.
I hope so, because the thing that was really incredible about it, you all, is that when the play was over, it wasn't really over. V invited all of us on the stage, the audience, community. And to her point, not separating activism and writing, it's all art, it's all one thing. And the curtains opened or pulled back, I can't remember exactly, V, but we were in the middle of a garden all of a sudden. And I'd never experienced anything like that. And it made me think of something V said to me at least a decade ago, you know, that we have to create the world that we want to see, you know, which I think is what she's been saying all night. Evangeline,
I want to invite everybody, if I can say this to you, Kev.
Yes, please.
December 5th up at ART, American Repertory Theater at Harvard. I've been, the last 3 years, I've been working on this project. It's been just the most fun thing I've ever done. I'm writing a musical fable about climate change, and it's really outrageous, and it's really trippy, and it's really fun, and the music is incredible. And I've been writing the book and lyrics with, and Justin Tranter is writing the music, and Idina Menzel is in it. And just, if you can come and see it, I think we're doing a concert version of it. I think it'll lift your spirits. It'll give you hope. It'll make you feel like everything's possible. That's what I'm hoping it will do. And if you can get tickets, because they're selling fast, but I'm so excited. I've never written a musical before. It's like, I'm having the best time of my life. So come see it if you can. I don't think it will be streamed. No, I saw the question.
Okay. Evangeline.
Hi, V.
Hi.
I just wanted to say thank you first for your transparency and for being candid. Also for communicating to our group how transformative and liberating writing can be, because we do talk a lot about that as a group, and we've been talking about that for, I guess, almost a year now. And so I do appreciate you reinforcing that. The question I have is, for those of us who have experienced trauma in our lives and we want to write about it, but the person who might have been the one who brought on the trauma or caused the trauma is still living, and we're worried or preoccupied with hurting them or their feelings, how do we navigate that?
Good question. Well, what I would say is this: write the book and worry about that later. You know, write the book and worry about it later. You know, like if we're always like protecting our perpetrators, we can't write. You know, just tell yourself you'll put it in the drawer if you're too scared to put it out there later. But write the book. You know, when I was writing the apology, I was not sure. I was like, am I really going to put this in the world? This is deep. This is like big reveal here. And I just said, write the book, and then you'll know. Then you'll know whether you want to put it in the world. But one of the things our minds are so good at doing is protecting our perpetrators. How many years have we protected our perpetrators at our own expense, right? And I think there are ways, once you get the book written, where you can either disguise it, or you can protect yourself and that person by name changes or whatever, but just write what you have to write and then see, you know, and if you're protecting the perpetrator as part of your journey, then write into that. Find out why you feel you need to protect that person so much, you know, what is it about that perpetrator that you feel so protective of, right? Who are you protecting? Ask yourself the questions like, why? For me, for so many years, I didn't want my father to be hurt. I didn't want my father to feel bad. I didn't want my father to be shamed in public. I mean, I had, and it was like, I never thought about me. I never thought about what I went through, like the bloody noses in restaurants, throwing me against walls in front of people. I mean, I was shamed every day, right? Right. But I was worried about, right? So I had to do a lot of work on what am I scared of? What am I scared of? And what if my perpetrator doesn't like me? Guess what? He already didn't like me. Right? He already kind of proved he didn't like me, you know? Right?
Right.
But I know the fear, because the fear is that that perpetrator is going to walk through the door any minute, and he's going to do shit. He's going to do something bad, right? Like the perpetrator is always lurking out there until we make peace with it, right? But writing you can do in your house, and no one needs to know about it until you decide to publish it. So keep it to yourself and keep writing it until you're ready to put it into the world. But write the real thing. Don't hold back. Go all the way with it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Dope glasses.
Thank you.
Twyla, then Amanda G. Hey.
Hey. Hi, V.
Hi.
First of all, I just wanted to, this feels like I'm in therapy for one thing. And I met you. You've actually been to my house before in Grand Forks, North Dakota with, I think, a mutual friend of ours, Winona LaDuke.
Oh my God, yes. Twyla, hi.
You came and you played hand games in my basement.
Oh my God, yes, I did.
It's so wild. When Kevin told me that you were going to be on here, I was so excited. I was so excited.
I'm so happy to see you.
Yes,
I was
you
down with Winona in Minnesota in that river, stop in line 3.
At line 3. Line 3. Yeah, I've been out there a few times, and Tara's out there. Indian country is so tiny.
Yeah,
and it's like we all kind of know each other and stuff. And I was just, so much of what you said has resonated with me, because after I left Grand Forks, I came back to the reservation. I'm back on my home reservation, way out in the country. And I am removed from people. And I think part of what I struggle with is burnout. Because of things like line 3. And it's crazy because it's like for one thing, it's the invisibility of Native people. And there's not a lot of us to do a lot of the activist work. A lot of us never even wanted to be activists. We just ended up being it because we wanted to live. Quite literally. We wanted our children to live, and our families and our people. And we ended up having to do that out of complete and utter necessity, you know, like doing things like line 3, no dapple was just in my backyard, all of those types of things. And then missing murdered Indigenous women, any number of things. But my question is in regards to burnout, because I find it difficult to write because I'm tired, you know. Never mind the fact that, you know, we've got the pandemic still going on, and it's undue impact on Indian country, and that's just what I'm sitting with, and I'm sure that a lot of people on the call tonight are probably feeling similarly. I want to write, but I'm a little bit scared of going to that place where my writing comes from, because I'm afraid I won't be able to come back, you know.
I get it.
So
Tawana, excuse me for being presumptuous, but what I'm hearing in your voice is so much grief, so much grief. And I don't know about you, but I'm filled with so much grief a lot. I got really sick this summer. I had a terrible sinus infection that almost took me out. And it was grief. It was in my head. It was literally behind my eyes. They couldn't get it out, right? I think you need to grieve. I think you need to take time to grieve. And if that means you sit by a river and you let yourself cry for the next 2 weeks, do that. Because I think what happens with grief, to me at any rate, is it begins to back up. It begins to back up. I don't let it out. And then I get sick. I get tired. I get exhausted. I feel like I can't go on. If it means like you have somebody sit and look at you and tell you how beautiful you are and tell you how amazing you are, because that's what always makes me cry, when people are crying to me, get help to cry. Get help with somebody to have your grief, because that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing, why did Indigenous people have to first be destroyed, first be removed from their lands, first have genocide, and now responsible for fighting every day, over and over? I think so many marginal groups feel it, but particularly Native Americans, Indigenous people, and Black African Americans. It's the ongoing cycle of being responsible after you've been responsible, after you've been abused. And there's so much grief. There's so much grief. The fact that we're having to fight to tell people not to put oil in the ground and destroy the water and the air. It's unbelievable, right? So I know you have something to say, and I know you have something to write, and we need your voice. We need you to write it. But first go and have your grief so you clear your passages, so you are able to tap into what you need to say without falling apart, right? And it means letting yourself have time to have that grief. I think we live in a culture that is so afraid of grief, so afraid of people expressing what sorrow we are carrying, what we've done to the earth, what we've done to each other, who we've poisoned, who we've left behind, who we've excluded, and how we feel excluded, right? So please take that time to be held in your grief, to be listened to in your grief, not to be alone in it.
Thank you.
If that makes sense.
It does. It does. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And call me.
I will.
I'll give Kevin my number. Just find me, because I'd be happy to talk with you. I really would.
I'd love to play hand games again too, by the way.
Okay, me too. That's the other thing. After you grieve, then you need to play.
Our team won too, for the folks on the call. So.
I vaguely remember that.
Amanda G, did you disappear? I saw you had your hand up.
I'm here.
Okay. Hey, Amanda G.
Hey, so thank you for sharing your story. I did have a question. So just to let you know, your story kind of reminded me of Joyce Myers a little bit. I grew up in a Christian background. And so my family, we're Caribbean. I was born in the Caribbean. And so it's really taboo to discuss certain things. It's like a secret. You're not supposed to talk about certain things. And so every time I begin to write about anything that has happened in my tiny little Caribbean family, I always get choked up. And so I get all these ideas and I try to open up my notepad to write it. And then I just stop because it just feels so heavy. And I feel sad because my family is very small. It's not a lot of us here. And if I begin to start writing about things that happen, they're going to be able to figure out who it is. And I just feel really bad talking about these things. And I just don't know how to get past it. That's one. And I forgot the second thing because I just feel nervous. I had two things to ask you, but it was that the first thing was how to write about these people and get past my fears about writing about them. And the second question I had, I can't remember, I'm nervous, but I'll remember after you probably start speaking on this first topic.
I
And
totally.
my mom is a pastor, so it's really difficult to talk about these things because, like, you're bringing shame to the Caribbean community.
Well,
by the way, I think there's no family that wants to hear their dirty laundry aired. Okay, I don't care what culture you're in, right? Nobody wants it out there, right?
Yeah.
I don't think any of us who've written about our lives and our families have not gone through what you're going through, right? Like that sense that you're betraying, the sense that you're spilling the family laundry, that that you're putting it all out there. Writing, as somebody said earlier, is dangerous business. It's dangerous. It's you're going against the curve. You're going against what you're supposed to do. It's you're misbehaved. You're not lining up. And as I said earlier, just write it. You don't have to put it out. You don't have to put it out. Just write it. They're not in your head. They're not in your computer. You can write whatever you want then. Well, they are in your head, but they're not in your computer, right? And I think you need to see what you have to say. So write it first and then decide what you want to do with it, right? You're not betraying them just by writing it down. Right?
I can't even get myself to write past a couple sentences because it's just so traumatic. It's a lot of abuse there. It's just traumatic for me. I've gone to therapy for it, but I mean,
what if you fabulized it? What if you made it like a story and it wasn't about you? Right? And you created a fictional character and you let that person tell their story and you stop making it about you so it's so close. Let that character tell the story, right? Because sometimes when you create like a fable or a story, that person can begin to tell and they're not as guarded and they're not as frightened because they're a character. So make somebody up who has that story. That's what I would try to do,
Okay.
Yeah, and when you publish it, you don't have to publish it under your name. You can publish it under a different name. There's a lot of different ways to do it, Look, my family doesn't talk to me, to be honest with you. Like my brother and sister don't talk to me. So that was the choice I made. I had to tell my truth or die. Like I just did. So I lost that family, but they were never my family. I'm sorry, they weren't. They didn't stand up for me. They betrayed me. They didn't care for me. So I have many friends now who are my family, who are my people now, and I love those people, and I feel just as taken care of, and just as embraced, and just as intimate, much more so, to be honest, because I know they want the best for me. So just tell your truth. Tell your truth, and don't worry about as you're telling it, and create your mythic character who is the truth teller, right? And let them tell the truth. It doesn't have to be you.
Okay, thank you. And the next question I had for you was, how do you stop yourself from reliving the trauma? Because I know, you talked about your father, but sometimes when I talk about things that happened to me, it's as if it happened yesterday. And then I feel like I'm shrinking. I can't walk. I don't want to go anywhere. If I'm in my car, I feel like I want to disappear in the seats. I just don't like the feeling.
Are you working with anybody like a therapist or somebody who can?
I am actually. I have a therapist. I've had her for 4 years now.
Okay, good. I think it's really important that you share what's going on with your therapist so they can help you walk through this stuff so you don't get caught there. Do you know what I mean? And
he tells me to write it. Yeah. Everybody tells me to write it. But I went to school for English. I'm an English major. I graduated from Brooklyn College with my degree, bachelor's in English. But when it comes to me writing about myself, I just don't do it. But I can write about any other novel you give me to read. I can write about it. If you tell me to write about me, I won't write it.
So write about a character who's like you. Don't write about you. Write about a character who's like you.
Okay.
Create that, right?
Okay.
The thing is, I'm just going to say this again and again and again. Our past cannot kill us. It's already happened. That's a story that's in our head that keeps us connected and keeps us attached and keeps us chained to that reality. You know, I feel this so much in my life. We live in a culture that is always telling us, don't go near the pain, numb yourself, take antidepressants, take this, take that, drink, eat, stay away from the pain. That is how we are kept connected to a consuming capitalist machine. When we go to the pain, when we walk through the pain, we release the pain and we become powerful people. So I just want everyone to know, I believe we are much more powerful, resilient, and strong than people make us out to be. And if I can walk through the pain, you all can walk through the pain. Everyone can walk through the pain, because guess what? It's already happened. It's up to us to not let it control us, right? And I think we can create characters who can talk about our pain. You know what? Create a dialogue between two people that you create in your mind and let them talk to each other. One, let it be your family, and let the family say, don't you dare talk about this. And the other voice say, oh, I want to talk about this, and get them to talk to each other and get them into a dialogue about why they don't want you to talk about it. What will happen if you talk about it, so that you can see it all laid out in front of you. So it's not controlling you, you know?
Thank you very much, V. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
V, we just have a couple of minutes left. My last question for you, if you could speak to the 9 and 10-year-old little girl who created Mr. Alligator, given all the things that you've gone through and experienced in your life, all the incredible things that you've done, all the things that you've survived, you know, all the lives that you've touched tonight in this world, you know, the fact that your play alone is in hundreds of languages, the Vagina Monologues, what would you say to that little girl who was 9 or 10 years old? What would you say to her now?
I'm just so proud you didn't give up. I'm so proud you didn't quit. I'm so proud you didn't kill yourself. I'm so proud you found the people in your life who helped you to keep going, and that you grabbed a hold and you found a way to get out of that thing that was pulling you under, that you'd never thought you'd survive, you know? And look, you know, the only thing that keeps us all going really in this world is love. It's the only thing. Like, there were people who saw my pain and they reached out to me, whether it was in the 12-step rooms or whether it was in places in my life that strangers would just appear and they would offer me things, or they'd offer me chances. And I think one of the things we all have to do in our lives is give back. Give back. Look at the person sitting next to you and see if they're wounded, and see if they're hurting, and see how you can lift them up. Because you know what? We heal when we give what we need the most to other people. We heal the broken part inside ourselves, you know? And I feel like we're all in a chain, we're all in a continuum trying to eradicate and undo our trauma. And it's so beautiful when you think that love is the antidote to trauma. It is, and it heals. And so writing is a form of that love. And I just want to say to you, Kevin, you're one of the most loving people I've ever met. I'm so proud to know you. I'm so proud of the work you're doing in this world, this group and all the groups you run, and who you are as a man, that you're constantly showing up and constantly stripping away all the disguises of masculinity that have kept you unvulnerable and kept you disconnected. You're just doing such beautiful work. And I love you with all my heart. I'm so honored you invited me to this beautiful gathering of writers. And just everyone, you know, bravery is just telling the truth. That's all it is. And stripping away so you get closer and closer and closer to a truth that feels impossible to say. But once you say it, the whole world opens up and it's radiant and beautiful. Thank you for having me here tonight. You know,
Love you, V, and I love all of you. Can I just suggest, because we're at our limit, just let V have the last words that she just said. Let's let it resonate for a second, and when you're ready to just sign off, please do. Let's just be in our thoughts of what we heard tonight, which is so incredible. You know, you just gave us a gift, V. So many gifts. The chat room has been incredible. I want to acknowledge Nobuko Miyamoto, who's going to be our speaker next week. She's here. who's one of the giants in our communities. She has an autobiography that we're going to be talking about. Someone who survived being interned during World War II as a Japanese American, who's gone through many things like what you've talked about tonight, as a human being, as a woman of color, who never separates art from activism either. And I just wanted to acknowledge her because she's going to be our guest speaker next week, and just say thank you, V, thank you, V, thank you, V, so much. And I need to say this to you all. One of the things that I think is so important about V is that she has always showed up whenever people like I have asked. And, the humility is incredible. You know what I mean? Humility is incredible. I can't tell you how many writers I know who are equally successful who we can't even get in touch with.
I love you, Kev.
I love you too. V is a real leader and a real visionary. So I just want to say thank you. And
Thank you.
we all have been
Everybody.
deeply
Go and
affected.
do something nice for yourself. Soak in a bath, run a shower, light a candle, hug your friend, make love, make the world better just through the love that we need to keep spreading around. We need a lot of it right now.
Please, let's unmute and just say thank you to V, please, and good night to each other. Can we just do that, please?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Appreciate you.
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so much.
Good
Good night, everybody.
Kevin, thank you.
Kevin.
Amazing.
Thank you, Kevin.
Bye,
We love you, V.
Love
We
you.
love you, V.
Kevin.
We love you, V.
Yes.
Love you.
Mm.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank
I'm
you.
so
It was a
inspired.
blessing. It's been a blessing. Thank you.
Blessings. Thank you. Deep.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Bye-bye.